absolutely worth a visit. Most people that come in here that say, this is my first time, I say, congratulations, it won't be your last.
This is my number one place. I've been coming to the island all my life. I know I've seen pictures of I was 5 years old because my grandfather had a marina here back in the 60s and 70s.
As you can see, there's plenty to talk about here on Kelleys Island. There's the Kelleys Island State Park, the North Shore Loop Trail, places like this, which is a remnant from the island's quarry and winemaking days. All of that is great and we'll get there soon, but this is the most magnificent part of the island. It's the Glacial Grooves. These are the most famous glacial grooves in the world. It's a 3.5-acre site, and we're going to begin right here. The Glacial Grooves are some of the coolest features I've ever seen. This section that has been preserved is around 400 feet long, 35 feet wide, and more than 10 feet deep in some spots. It's not part of the Kelleys Island State Park, but it's located just a short distance from the State Park campground.
We have the Glacial Grooves that is nearby, that is a historical treasure that a lot of people come to visit.
The Glacial Grooves site has its own designation. It's Glacial Grooves State Memorial. Just this past May, a $2.25 million site improvement was unveiled. That both protects the geological feature and allows visitors to have enhanced access to and over the grooves.
The investment that the state made in this island and the Glacial Grooves is probably one of the most important investments we could make at this point. We need to understand the actual history of the Earth. We need to understand our relationship with the history.
Those who visited this site in the past remember that the grooves were just there, with no barriers and little in the way of explanation about why they exist.
It's been years since we've been here, about 25 years, and they didn't have all this. All we did was just stand down there and look at it.
I mean, where else are you going to see something like this?
I mean, in Ohio. This is what's fantastic. I mean, it's in Ohio.
The grooves were created somewhere around 18,000 years ago, when the last ice age was ending. An ice sheet hundreds of feet thick covered this part of the country. As ice advanced and retreated, the land was scoured and scarred. The limestone here was particularly susceptible to the creation of this type of formation.
We live in flat farm country, and that's what did that, the ice age, you know. Some places have rocks, and some places we got flattened out where we live.
This is said to be the best, most easily accessible place to view glacial grooves on this scale anywhere in the world. There were many more in this region, but they were destroyed by quarry operations in the 1800s. This was protected by the Ohio History Connection until May, when control was shifted to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, or ODNR. Some sources say that as many as 100,000 people come to see the Glacial Grooves each year. The Glacial Grooves are just the most famous of the natural attractions that exist on Kelleys Island.
My name is Patty Johnson, and I work for the Kelleys Island Chamber of Commerce. Kelleys Island is a historical and ecologically important island in Lake Erie.
Kelleys Island is the largest of the American islands in Lake Erie. The island and its natural elements draw people from far beyond Ohio.
People come from all over the world to see us. And our glacial grooves are petroglyphs and basically a real visit to the old part of this country.
There is no bridge to Kelleys Island. Most people come over on a ferry, which takes about 20 minutes from Marblehead on the mainland. I came early in the morning, and it was a spectacular crossing. The pace of life is slower on the island. There are shops, restaurants, and some places to stay. Undoubtedly, however, the place maintains a laid-back vibe.
People joke about island time. There is island time because it's not a city. We don't have one stoplight here.
Kelleys Island State Park is situated on the north side of the island. It covers nearly 700 acres. There is a campground, some public beach areas, and a pier jutting out into Lake Erie. Established in 1956, it's a popular place.
This is one of the finest state parks that you'll find in the state of Ohio. We sell out from Memorial Day all the way through Labor Day. Every weekend we're booked solid. Every day pretty much we're booked solid.
A good portion of the entire island is preserved natural land, and it's all free to visit.
So important for families and children and young people to get out of their cars and their carts and go travel around and enjoy all the areas of the island, and it is massive.
A good way to see a lot in a short period of time is by circling the North Shore Loop Trail. It's an easy walk that is just about a mile long. It's on this walk that the North Shore Alvar State Nature Preserve can be found.
You have the North Shore Trail on the north side of the island. It takes you a couple different ways. You can go out onto the Alvars, which are rock foundations that are like flat rocks that right over the water.
Right along the shores of Lake Erie is the place where the Alvar is most prominent. It's like a flat shelf right up against the water. The Alvar is a rare geological feature seen only in a handful of places around the globe. The nature preserve is said to be the best place to experience it in Ohio.
Those places don't exist anywhere else. You can't go down to a place like that and walk on flat rock like that hardly anywhere in the country.
If you look closely at this, there is evidence of glacial scraping on the limestone.
Alvar are rocks that are formed around these glacier areas. If you can go get up here, you say, I'll meet you at the flat rock. So that's what that meant, was it's just these vast flat rocks that you can literally lay on, enjoy.
Just at the beginning of the North Shore Loop Trail is one of my favorite places on the island. This is called the Old Stone Crusher Facility, complete with another adjacent building. Parts of it date to the 1800s. It's one of the best places to see remnants of the history of the island and the industry that once existed there.
It has a lot of quarrying and industry background in the winemaking, and it has amazing structures, architecture.
There's something about abandoned structures that I've always enjoyed. This one certainly provided plenty to like. There was the long chamber, the spaces in the ceiling through which the sky was visible, rubble collected around portions of the floor of the structure. Then in another spot, evidence that nature will eventually consume these buildings. It obviously began that process years ago. There were no signs or barricades prohibiting people from checking out this place. I would just encourage those who go to move carefully through the space. There are numerous trails crisscrossing the island. This one is within the North Pond State Nature Preserve. It goes from this trail to a boardwalk and then out to a barrier beach. It's pretty special. North Pond is what's known as a natural lake embayment pond. North Pond was created when the water level in Lake Erie dropped. That created this wetland that is still tied to the larger lake. The boardwalk takes hikers through the wettest part of the preserve. The short trail, which in total covers about a mile, empties out onto the Lake Erie shoreline. Signs will tell visitors all they need to know about this location. From North Pond, it's just a short walk to another really special place. East Quarry and Horseshoe Lake provide a popular place for hiking, biking, and fishing.
These are all natural quarries. We have a lot of wildlife in there. It's just a great place to take a hike and enjoy nature.
The first thing most visitors will do is walk around the edge of the quarry, which is now flooded by the water of Horseshoe Lake. Limestone was pulled from this site through much of the 1930s. In addition to the path around the top of the lake, there are several more miles of trail winding through this area. Those trails are rocky, plus there's a little up and down. Still, there's nothing too difficult about exploring this part of the island's interior. I didn't spend a great deal of time here, but it was quite enjoyable. The final feature that I want to mention about Kelleys Island is remarkably cool, but it's unfortunate that it looks nothing like it did in the past. Inscription Rock is located on the south shore of the island, a short distance from the main ferry terminal.
We want to preserve and to uplift that area.
Inscription Rock is a big slab of limestone, a little larger than 20 by 30 feet. It contains relatively recent petroglyphs created by Native Americans who inhabited the area. There are over 100 images carved into the rock. Today, the rock is covered by a protective structure. Over the years, however, the limestone was open to the elements. That means the petroglyphs are not really recognizable today. There is a replica at the site that shows what the original petroglyphs looked like. Despite the degradation of the images that has occurred through the years, this remains a vital piece of Kelleys Island's history.
The history of our island started right there. And that's why I really am pursuing the ODNR to try to say to them, let's make this as important as the glaciers.
From Inscription Rock to all the natural areas to the Glacial Grooves, there is so much to see on Kelleys Island. I arrived on the island this morning on the 7 o'clock ferry from Marblehead. I was able to walk to every location that I visited today. Didn't take all that long and it was pretty easy. There are a couple of preferred ways to get around the island, by bicycle or golf cart. If you must, you can bring your vehicle with you up the ferry. The bottom line question, is it worth a visit to Kelleys Island? I would have to say so. Thanks for joining me here on Old, Alone, and Far From Home. We're really getting close to that visit to Ireland and the rest of my trip into Europe and Northern Africa. I hope you come back and join me again really soon.